Welcome to Talk Design Podcast, the space where creativity meets conversation. I'm Adrian Ramsey, your host, and as someone deeply entrenched in the world of design, I'm thrilled to introduce you to the minds that inspire me in the hope that they will spark something special within you too. From a design past crafting women's swimwear to pushing the boundaries of performance sportswear, from mountaineering to international yachting, to implementing systematic innovation solutions that transcend boundaries in aerospace industry. My heart remains rooted in architecture, and exploring the emotional tapestry woven by built spaces is my fascination. My journey in design has been what can only be described as a life of design. I want to thank you for lending me your ears. I'm eager to embark on this next episode together. And for those of you who prefer to watch and listen, you can catch this episode at YouTube. That's youtube.com/@TalkDesignPodcast. My guest on Talk Design today is Mick Hawes. Now, Mick is a builder's business coach, and that's under the label of Black Belt. So the Builder's Business Black Belt, and I'm sure there's a story about how he kicks ass there somewhere. And he is also a podcast host with The Tool Shed. I've had a chat with Mick before on his podcast, and it was absolutely fascinating. The systems he runs around it, and obviously as a business coach, he's very in tune with what those systems are and how it brings success to people. And we were just chatting about his podcast and where that sits in the ranks of how it works for his business as well. So I want to say welcome, Mick, and thank you for making time to come on Talk Design.
Thanks for having me on. It's an absolute pleasure. As you said, we were on my podcast a little while ago, and it was a really interesting chat, really enjoyable chat. So more than happy to be on this podcast and have another chat. It's exciting.
I think that you'll be able to deliver some wonderful insights and all good coaching knowledge, good, just good general where everything sits, who takes the responsibility and what happens on here. So, Mick, I'm going to kick off with a really simple question because it's one you'll know so well. Tell us a bit about yourself, mate. Tell us what your journey's been from being like a kid, pretty much. I'd love to know.
Interesting. I started life off as an electrician, and my choices were I came home finished school in grade 10, and I came home one day after school, and my dad, who was a builder, he was a commercial builder, said, "Listen, there's an electrician coming over tonight to give you a job. If you don't take it, you'll be working for me." So my choice was very easy, that I wasn't working for my father, so I became an electrician. I did that, and then, I think by mutual agreement between my boss and myself, I wasn't continuing with that job. So I jumped in my panel van. I had a HQ panel van, the dream car.
Yeah, the dream car.
And I put my 3-in-1 stereo. Are you old enough to remember a 3-in-1 stereos? You have the record player, the tape, and the radio, AM, FM, both bands, and my drum kit in the back of the panel van, and left Hobart and went on an adventure. It was meant to be for 3 months in Sydney. Ended up staying there for 13 years, got married, had 2 kids up there. Then we moved back to Hobart, had another one down here. But in Sydney, I was a professional musician for a number of years, and then went back to the tools as an electrician, fixed photocopiers for a few years with Canon, one of the first colour photocopier technicians in the country, which was pretty interesting. And then kind of got back into the music scene, working in a music shop, built a recording studio, and then for whatever reason woke up one morning thinking, I think I should sell life insurance.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
It's just a natural progression,
Blinding flash of the obvious, I'm sure.
So I did that. It lasted for 2 years. It wasn't the best job in the world, but I'm so glad that I did it, because it introduced me to the personal development side of things. And I was fortunate to run into the sales trainer at that time. His name's Ian Seagale. He's still an incredibly good, close friend however many years later, 30 odd years later, he speaks to our group, our quite regularly builders business black belt. He's a very smart cookie and a great friend. And I guess after that, I got involved with time management in the life insurance game. I was working sort of 14 hours a day, 6 and 7 days a week. That was the only way I knew how to make this work. So I started to look into time management, found a program called Time Power by Dr. Charles Hobbs, and it changed my life. Like within 3 months, I went from working 14 hours a day to 7 hours a day like a normal person, and maintained the results. Ended up working for that company, and they flew me all around the country teaching time management, which was awesome. And then we started our own business in Hobart, which was like a personal development coaching business, just sort of mindset stuff.
Sort of almost like life coaching.
Yeah, not quite, but yes, similar, I guess. I didn't know what I was doing. I don't know what you call it.
Right.
I was just doing it. That kind of just evolved into business coaching, small business. And even back then, I thought small business was a niche, which it's not. And eventually, I ended up with my own business coach. It was Taki Moore, who's amazing. And he taught me that I needed to niche. And so what I did to niche was I for whatever reason, I don't really know what the motivation was, but I wanted to work with businesses where their customers were driven to them because of a want rather than a need. Ooh. And so what that meant was I looked on the internet and I found a website, believe it or not, that had the type of every small business there was in the world. There was something like 2,400 different types of small business: butcher, baker, candlestick maker, that sort of
right. Yeah.
And I went through it with a highlighter, and I just assumed, what are their customers driven to them by? Is it a want or a need? And I ended up with only about 40 or 50 left that were driven, the customers were driven to the business through a need. And I narrowed it down to 3, believe it or not.
Yeah.
One was building, which is what we eventually ended up in. The other was golf professionals, and the other was hair and beauty. I don't know whether you could imagine me being a coach for hair and beauty.
Calling, mate. You missed your calling.
Like, what a joke. But anyway, I narrowed it down to those 3, and Taki at one of his sessions said, look, you can't have 3, it's got to be 1. And he just got the coin out and basically said,
it's either golf or it's building.
Well, no, it was actually hair and beauty. I ended up with hair and beauty or building. And he flipped the coin and he landed it like that. And he basically said, what did you hope it landed on? And I told him, and he said, that's your niche. I never found out what the coin landed on.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But it was whatever you hoped it landed on was what it was going to be.
That was it. Yeah. And
you were praying it wasn't hair and beauty.
Well, no. I'd seen another coach do well in that space, but I'm glad it didn't because, I would have been a shocker. But just a little subtle difference is, like, there are other really great coaches that coach in the trades area with plumbers and electricians and whatever. And it was just my desire to work with customers or work with businesses where the customers were drawn to them through a need rather than a want. A want rather than a need. And it's like, you want to go and speak to an architect. You want to go and speak to a builder. You call the electrician because your lights are out, or you call the plumber because your toilet's blocked. You need them. And there's just a subtle difference there. And I really, really like the relationship building side of the conversation with our builders. Like, teaching them how to communicate effectively and build relationships, connections, trust well after the project's finished, like creating a bigger circle of friends after the project's finished rather than it just being a financial transaction. That gives me energy.
It's a really fascinating point, a want or a need. And I often look at the business I'm in and, in the design business. And I think that part of its lack of power is that it's a want, and becomes like a luxury, versus a need where they've got to go and buy soap. Let's go with soap.
Yeah, bread.
Bread. Yeah, yeah. And I look at that and I go, both are marketplaces that have lots of different people and skill sets in them.
Yeah.
And one of the things, like you said, I'm going to use milk instead of bread. Milk, there's probably, like maybe 7 varieties out there under maybe 7 brands. I don't know, something. It's not a lot. And there's a cow somewhere as well in that picture, I suppose. But then if you look at something like design, there is this broad spectrum of different people that have, it's all subjective kind of thing. And then you look at building, and it's still heavily regulated. And then you look at something like building versus, say, the hairdressing. Hairdressing, again, is all subjective on, what it is and how it looks at the end and whether they worked with you well and matched your face or whatever. Building, again, heavily regulated, highly complex, and there is a big difference between a good builder and a bad builder, but there's a bigger difference between a good businessman builder and a bad businessman builder. I say man there, but I don't mean man, I just mean person, because I've dealt with women builders who have just been brilliant as well. So yeah, I look at that and I go, when you break it down that next step, there's, I don't know, you tell me, there's very big similarities in, the building. But then I also look at it and I go, well, when we use, say, a builder who would class themselves as an architectural builder, the level of their abilities and the people around them is tuned much higher than, say, someone who is a project builder, not the principal builder. The principal builder, if they've been a project builder or are a project builder, they have their runs on the board because that's volume, and it really, margins are tighter, things make a difference. When you come out into architectural builders, their margins are probably bigger and they're building, their supply chain stuff isn't quite as tight, but their finishes, they really have to educate on the end game. Well, the whole game, but the end game's what we see.
Yeah. But I'm going back to what you said about a good builder and a good builder business person. That comes back to, I think, what I would call the small business Bible. Really, it was one of the very first business books that I ever read, and that was the E-Myth. Before it was the E-Myth revisited and branched out into a gazillion other types of E-Myth. Michael Gerber. And just really understanding that they're two completely separate skill sets, and the fatal assumption that, we not even builders, small business owners make, is that because I am good at the technical work, I will be able to have a good business that does that technical work. And he calls it the fatal assumption. And he said that more businesses go under because of that assumption. Because I'm good at the technical work, the business will be okay. If I'm a good builder, I will have a good building business, is a fatal assumption. Because they're two completely different mindsets and skill sets. Doesn't mean that you can't do both. It just means that you need to understand that your skill at building has zero to do with the success of your business.
I think that's actually the biggest point that I could make with anything. Like, I remember, like, your parents, well, my parents used to say to me, well, you can do anything you want. And I don't know that they really, I think they meant that, but I don't know that they think that they know what that could mean when you put it out in the scope of the world. People have different capacity and capability, and they have different skill sets that sit in certain areas. There's pieces that come really naturally to them. There's pieces they have to work incredibly hard. And even with the things that come naturally to them, they have to work incredibly hard to hone those. I used to have a general manager in a company that I worked for where he was a captain coach of an AFL team and captain coached 3 grand finals. So no slug. And he was like, I was never the best player in the team in his whole career. And he said, but man, I'd work. He said, I would train. And he goes, the number of times when he had teams where he would have somebody who was an absolute genius, superstar, natural, and they wouldn't put the training in, but they'd never end up being their best player. It still takes honing the skill. Just because you've got the muscle that works for it doesn't mean that it's going to come out. Yeah, positively. And I also go, I believe, and I've been around a fair time now, not everybody's cut out to be a business person.
Say that again.
It's a totally different skill. And there are some people that are made best to work for somebody else. And it's funny, I've been in my own business for, it seems like forever, probably 30 something years. And I would say that I'm probably still more the latter, where I'd be better to work for somebody else. Okay. Seriously, and I've done a lot of coaching and stuff like that. But I have a mind that can see possibility and can innovate ideas and innovate solutions and all those pieces. But my harder part, and technically in design and stuff like that, no problem whatsoever. It is the harder part is the switching that mind to the other mind, being able to have those two minds all the time. And you need the business mind to become the dominant mind, I believe, to succeed over the technical mind. I don't know. You tell me if I'm wrong or right, but that's certainly the view I have of it.
I don't know that there's any wrong or right. It's just kind of what you find that what works. And like I'm constantly learning and discovering and finding new models and new ideas and philosophies. And what you just said there, there's a couple of different minds. Well, just what we've been talking about of late. In fact, I ran a full day session for our black belt members just this Monday on Pat Lencioni's The 6 Working Geniuses, and that made a profound effect on me and others in relation to what you're just saying, because it's so hard if you running your business by yourself and you don't bring other people, whether they be direct employees or virtual assistants or outsourcing organizations or whatever, into your ecosystem to allow you to succeed. Because through this 6 working geniuses model, he's basically talking about there are 6 working geniuses. The first one is the ability to wonder, ask the big questions. What if we could do this? And, really expand your horizons. The second one is invention. So what is the solution or the invention that we can create to take advantage of that question? The third is discernment, which is your ability to figure out that was a bad idea or a good idea. But I think there's a lot more bad ideas than good ideas. The fourth is galvanizing, and that is your ability to rally the troops around this idea. And then the fifth is enablement, and that is having people that are prepared to step forward. The people who volunteer for the places on the committee at the social clubs and this, that, and the other. They're the enablement people. Then they're fantastic. And then the last one is what he calls tenacity, which is the ability to finish. Like a person just will not let go until this thing is finished.
Dog with a bone. Get it to the finish line.
You cannot have all 6 of those in one person. And he's done over 250,000 assessments. And
sorry, who is he?
His name's Patrick Lencioni, and the book is called The 6 Types of Working Genius.
6 types
of working genius. And so they've done all of these assessments. We put all of our black belt members through the assessment on Monday. And you'll find that everyone has 2 levels of genius, 2 levels of competency, and 2 frustrations. Out of those 6 parts to a project, you need all 6 parts of those 6 parts that I just explained for a project. You need the question asked.
You're going to go 2, 2, 2.
Yeah. Pretty much everyone has two, and you'll have two geniuses, and that could be at opposite ends. You could have the genius of wonder and being able to ask the big questions, but you could also have the genius of tenacity, which means that you'll finish the project. And then you'll have another two, which are working competencies. And so something that is a genius is something you could work on all day.
Yeah, it gives you energy. Flow. You love flow. Yep. A
competency is something that you're good at, but you run out of puff pretty quickly with it. A frustration is something that you're just no good at, and it just drags the energy out of you.
Yeah.
And if you can surround yourself, and so one of the suggestions that I made to our black belt members, because some of them are like solopreneurs or husband and wife or business partners, and all of the areas of genius weren't covered in that partnership, is to just find other people who have the geniuses where you're deficient and just ask them to be on your, quote unquote board. And all that means is would you mind meeting with me once a month, holding me to account and allowing me to run my ideas past you? Just like in the example of, let's say I don't have the genius of discernment. I actually do, but just assume that I don't. But I might have the genius of invention. If I find someone who has discernment, the beauty of discernment and the people that have that genius is they don't need to know everything about everything to make a decision. They just have this innate ability to go, Adrian, that's a bad idea.
I love sitting in a room with people. And this is, I have the wonderment one. And when something's really shit, it's really gone to shit, and they've put a lot of effort and energy into it, I love to take them all the way back to, when was this a good idea? At what point did you go, this is a good idea and you should execute this good idea? And what was around you at that point? So I want to get some sort of sense of where the energy sat in them, that they saw all the possibility and all the blue sky.
Yeah. No, missing the discernment piece.
Well, then you can see the piece, and I'm no coach, so I don't even pretend to be a coach, but then you can see the point where the vision was and everything else was, and you can see where the hole is. A bit like that. I love this 6 working pieces because of the fact that once you can see that, you go, you know what? This is why the good idea is no longer a good idea. It wasn't a bad idea necessarily, given the right structure, given the right point, just like you're saying, given those other things, it wasn't a bad idea. And some of them will be just bad ideas as well. There'll be some just shit ideas. But people make, and I say people, I say myself, most 99.9% of decisions are emotional. And the ones that aren't emotional are probably on autopilot, and that's why we breathe. We're not making the decision, it's done for us. The survival techniques, but everything else runs on some kind of emotional and situational setup. So I'm in the situation, whether that's good or bad, I'm in a great situation. I look at people who make a lot of money from business and then go, I'm going to go and do this, and the thing doesn't work because emotionally they made a decision that wasn't necessarily aligned with where all their values sat. Anyway, I think that's fascinating. What were your two? You've got discernment, and what else?
Invention.
Right.
Yeah. And one of my working competencies is wonder. So I can wonder, but it doesn't give me energy. Like it's
work.
Yeah. But I love the invention, and I didn't realize, but I've been doing it for a long time, particularly with our members, is they go, I'm going to do this. And I'm going, oh,
mate,
I don't think you should.
Whoa. Let's just take a breath and sleep on that one.
Yeah. There's a really good, another book I've been listening to, Keith Cunningham. He's a bit old school.
Yeah, Keith, I know Keith. Yeah.
The Road Less Stupid is the book.
Yeah, I know the book. read
and
it.
he has which is a really great piece. If you struggle with discernment, he's got a thinking time structure, and he's a big proponent of having time to think about your ideas, because he said you'll find, just as you said, you'll find that most of your biggest problems started out as a great idea.
Yeah.
And have the great idea, but go away and follow the thinking time structure. And you ask questions like, what is the unasked question? What am I not asking about this project? And then you'll sort of go down a little bit further and you'll ask yourself the question, what is the percentage chance of this not working? You know, is it 50-50? Is it 80-20 or whatever? And then if it doesn't work, what is the potential financial cost of this if it doesn't work?
If it doesn't work.
You're asking yourself questions and potentially not going ahead with your project until you get the answer to the question of it not working to a low percentage. Right. So the percentage of it not working needs to be low, and the cost, if it doesn't work, also needs to be low before you start, going headlong into the project. And there'll be a lot of people listening to that and go, oh, that's bullshit. You need to just go for it and back yourself and all that sort of stuff.
You've got to do what you believe in and dream in. Yeah. It'll all come together.
And I'm all for backing yourself. Yep. However, I do work with a bunch of businesses that when they get into that mode, they can lose their business. So
the cost of it not working is extreme. They could lose their business, their house, their everything.
It could be that they take on one project that's driven by ego because it's a beautiful project. It would look really good on their CV that they've built it. They've never built something like that. It's an architectural project, never built it before, don't really have the business acumen to manage that scale of financial
exposure.
All of that, and managing the emotional expectations of the people in a project of that quality.
Yeah.
And so you've got to be very, very cautious and careful. I'm not saying don't do it, but speak to other people and get people on your board who have done that before, that can support you and shortcut the time that it takes you to get the experience to be able to manage a project like that. Just don't back yourself and believe, because the consequence of that failing can be catastrophic.
Yeah. I think the point that you make there, whilst don't just back yourself and believe, you need to back yourself to believe, trust me, all the way through. And the big and is who's around you, how have you prepared for it, what steps have you taken to know that you're secure in it. We have a few horror stories like that with, we've done design work, and I'd say this for designers as well, listening, you can, if you start out with a huge project that is, something beyond the scope that you've ever done before or imagined before, you're in the sink and swim moment, and chances are you're not going to make any money from it because you won't know what you don't know.
That's right.
And then secondly, which is a learning curve, and you'll do that on small jobs as well, where you'll uncover things you don't know. And it's not the end of the world, provided it won't sink you, provided it won't really hurt you. And I know in my horror stories with builders, I had one particular builder, awesome, probably the best builder technically I've ever met, like just incredible. Good problem solver, reasonable. They're craftsmen at the other end of it. And he wanted to move into bigger and better stuff. And I'm like, yep, I think, let's do it. I'd like to thank Stetson Hats Australia for providing my amazing collection of open road Stetson hats. Since 1865, John B. Stetson has been crafting legendary headwear, adorning the heads of Western icons like Annie Oakley and George Custer. The open road hat debuted in 1937, beloved by artists, outlaws, presidents alike. Its timeless style fits the setting from city streets to open plains. Whether in the cab of a truck or my trusty Mini Cooper, the open road is all style. If you think hats aren't for you, you just haven't found the right one yet. Discover yours at stetsonaustralia.com or stetson.com if you're in the USA. Thanks, Stetson, for your support. Please share your Stetson moment by emailing me your photo to talkdesign@gmail.com. Let's celebrate the timeless allure of Stetson together. And we gave him a job that, this is a few years back now, gave him a job that had a $1.6 million budget, and the client wanted an awful lot for their $1.6 million. And we run a process where we start our costings while we're in pencil drawings. So we work that closely with the builder that we're holding hands together the whole way. So I've got X amount of this, I'm looking at this, give me some ideas, give me some numbers around this. Where are we sitting? You know, what kind of thing? And he kept telling me, yep, we're all good. Yep, we're all good. And as we were getting closer to him going and having a client meeting, he'd already met them, obviously, but he was going to present his quote. And we were still in pencil at this stage. We had not moved to drafted. So I wanted him to go with pencil, talk to his engineer, do all those things. We'd done that with him. Then you run a big a big tight costing, but with the information you've got. And we know that it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be really close. Go out to all your trades, you know all these things. And anyway, I hounded him, and he was like, yeah, no, I've got the meeting. I wasn't going to the meeting, and got the meeting. And about 10 minutes before the meeting, I spoke to him. And he'd been ghosting me for, I don't know, a week, sending me texts. No conversation. And he rang me, he said, yeah, no, I'm really excited going, this, da. That's an amazing house. It's pumping up all that. It's $3.1 million. And I said, what? And he goes, it's $3.1 million. And I'm like, mate, good luck. You're probably going to lose your balls. I said, the budget's 1.6. Yeah, but they want all these things. I said, yeah, I know. And we've been telling them they can have them because you've been costing it in the journey. Do you think he got the job? No. What do you think it cost me for him not to have that job? Other than redesigning it, I reckon it probably cost me $30,000 worth of time, energy, customer relationship, everything else to bring that back. And I did the job from then on for nothing so that it got built, because I have that tenacity one.
Yeah.
I don't like that one not to be completed. And it meant that we had a year where the profit was sucked because of it and all the rest. But at the end of the day, we got it across the line for the client. And it was my fault because I'd introduced the build. I took on the responsibility of that. And big learning curve for me. But also from then on, I'd never do a job that was over a certain size with a builder that we didn't test out on another size multiple times sometimes. In fact, we have to do it too many times. They're not the right builder for the big job. We just keep them for smaller jobs.
Yeah.
It's like, ones that are easier. It is. It's a fascinating journey. And I mean, I go back through all the education that you've done in the books that I don't know how many you've listed so far. I've tried to write them down as we're going. That's why when this is on YouTube, everybody's going, what the hell is he looking at? I'm looking at my pad. Because I can't write and not look. The amount of education you've done, and there's some really big standouts in there on things that make a difference. And yet it was a toss of a coin that got you here.
Yeah, I guess I was really fortunate, going back to my relationship with Ian, who was the sales trainer back in the life insurance days.
In Seagale.
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 And he just, I guess, impressed upon me how important self-education was.
Yeah.
And I remember just one instance that he lent me, like I didn't even buy my own copy of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He lent me the book, and sort of, I don't know, a third of the way into the book, he'd written on one of the margins, when you get to this page, let me know, I'm going to buy you lunch.
Yeah, right.
And so, you know, some weeks later he goes, "How you going with the book?" I going, "Oh, yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, oh yeah." And he said, "You haven't read it, have you?" So he sprung me. But what he found was that at that point I wasn't a voracious reader. I didn't like reading.
Yes.
You know, I think I'd read one book in my life, which was like Invaders from Space or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And a comic book.
Yeah. and so he gave me cassettes back in the day.
Uh-huh.
Zig Ziglar, See You at
Yeah.
the Top,
Oh,
things like
Zig
that.
Ziglar, one of my favorites of all
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
And but I started to listen to Zig, and I started to listen to Jim Rohn, and I started to listen to all of these legends in that space, and they all said, "You've got to read these books," you know. So I kind of was bludgeoned into submission about reading. And at this point, I don't read a lot now. I prefer to listen with, you know, Audible and things like that. But there was a time when I just read and read and read, and I've just got massive bookshelves all over the place with books everywhere, and it's wonderful.
Can I ask you a question about Audible as a, you know, not so much as a platform, but as a method? You find it easy to read auditory as opposed to visually?
I find it more enjoyable to listen, and this is just my philosophy, that if I'm going to listen, I listen. And sure, I'll have them going when I'm driving the car and things like that as a bit of an additional, but I listen and make notes and things like that. I don't just listen while I'm doing other things. Well, my hands are busy and my mind's not, because I've had a lot of conversations with some of our younger builders, and you know, the younger generation, they're a bit impatient and all that sort of stuff, and they go, "I like the Audible because I can put it on 1.2 times and get through it quicker," or there's another platform, I can't even remember the name, Blinkist, I think it is.
Yeah, Blinkist. I just listened to the short version. Yep.
Yeah, and like I personally, I just disagree with it completely, because you've got to do the work. Like you said earlier on in our conversation, you've got to do the work. And I've gotten so much value out of the detail and the repetition. As an example, I read or listened to one of Mike Michalowicz's books called Fix This Next. So Mike Michalowicz has written 10 or 11 books now. I was first introduced to him with a book called The Pumpkin Plan. I had a podcast called Small Business Smart Solutions, and I was interviewing authors from all around the world on different business aspects and what have you. And I found Mike, and it was The Pumpkin Plan.
Yeah, right.
And I loved it. And it's a book about the parallels between building a successful business and growing giant pumpkins. And you've got no idea how similar the process is.
Yeah,
It's
right.
incredible.
Okay, that's interesting. Like, yeah. Mike who? Mike
Michalowicz.
Michalowicz. Okay.
I can spell it if you want me to spell it.
No, I'll get you to send it to me on an email and we'll put it in the show notes, mate.
Yes. Anyway, Mike got back in contact with me after the first interview and said, "I've got a new book coming out called Profit First. Can I come back on the podcast and to promote it?" And so I read Profit First so I could be a competent interviewer when we got back to it. And it changed my life. So I'm a good friend of Mike's. He's just a brilliant guy, nice guy, and he's written a lot of books. And the latest one that I've read is Fix This Next. And I reread it and reread it and reread it, and it is completely transformed our builder's business black belt curriculum.
Yeah, right.
So we've all but thrown everything out and started it afresh with the new tool that came out of Fix This Next. And what it does is it allows people to ensure that what they're working on right now is the most important thing.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Absolutely critical, because most business people get pushed around by urgency and frequency and recency, and that causes their or influences their decision making. And so what we end up doing is running around trying to solve what we call apparent problems, because that's what's pressing on us. That's what we're feeling. But the reality is there is a weak link in your chain. If you imagine your business is a series of links in a chain.
Yep.
starting from your what we call the attract strategy marketing, all the way through to, handover and nurturing past clients and communicating to feedback into the front end of your business. Like that whole thing is a chain, and there's lots of links, and there is a weak link. And if you've got a weak link, the chain is dysfunctional. It doesn't work. And so we're running around chasing apparent problems, but we don't have a tool to identify the weak link. And we don't need to make the weak link the strongest link. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be strong enough so it doesn't break anymore. Identify where the next weak link is. And so we've created this tool to identify what your weak link is at any given moment to stop you from wasting your time working on apparent problems.
Awesome. And
so,
that would work in any business.
Any business.
It's a thinking tool as opposed to a, like specific to builders.
I mean, we've made our specific to builders, obviously.
Yes, of course.
But I didn't have to modify it much.
Yeah.
It's fundamentally for any business, but the whole idea of it is, and we call it the black belt compass. And I think in the introduction you said, how did we come up with the name black belt? Because I don't overthink things. My coach's business was black belt. What am I going to call my business? And I went, well, it's builders and it's about business, and third B is black belt. So that'll do. That's how that came about. It's got nothing to do with martial arts remotely.
And that's the discernment.
Yeah, it's just the lazy man.
Well, it's like this works, and the other is what's the risk? None.
Yeah, no,
none. Yeah, and you can.
And anyway,
it's catchy enough that people understand it. Like they go, oh, okay.
And so the compass, and I just found this profound, is most business owners use their intuition, their level of business skill, I suppose you could call it, their instincts, let's call it instincts, to navigate the terrain. So if we can use the metaphor that we're running through the bush, you use your instincts to navigate the terrain. There's a tree, I'll run around it. There's a log, I'll jump over it. There's a hole, I'll jump over that. There's a cliff, I'll turn left, you know, and so you use your instincts to navigate the terrain. And that's how most business owners, they use their instincts to navigate the business terrain. The only issue is, what if you're going in the wrong direction?
Still navigating the terrain. You might be doing it brilliantly.
Yeah. You're running like an absolute champion, making lots of, covering lots of distance, but you're running in the wrong direction. So you need a compass to go, that's the direction I need to run in. That's the weak link. That's what I need to be working on. And you use your instincts to navigate the terrain in that direction. So you need instincts and you need a compass, because if you've just got a compass and no instincts, it goes, go that way. And you go that way and there's a big ravine and you just
fall off the cliff.
So you need both. And so what I believe creates good instincts is being part of a great community, because we've just identified with the 6 types of working genius that you're not going to be great at everything. So you've got to surround yourself with like-minded people that want to help you succeed, you help them succeed. Community is an absolute key to success. And so they help refine your instincts, and then you have a tool like the compass to make sure you're going in the right direction. Then you're laughing.
I totally agree with everything that you've said there. And I think that when people think, you say with the word community, I think there's people out there that think that that's who's in their team directly, their we want to say staff. It's not. It's their peers. It's who they're around. It's who they're having the conversations with. And I know that the mirrored learning that I have had from watching other people's businesses become, something go off track, the mirrored learning that I've applied in my own business has been invaluable. And I've managed to mirror that learning prior to ever falling off the cliff. My instincts haven't seen it, but put that in place and I don't have to worry about it, that risk assessment piece. And I think the fact that what happens is we, and I say me, it's not we, but I know other people that do this as well. I will get enough excitement behind it that I believe that there is, and enough forward-looking vision that I believe that there's no hole to fall in. And having a few people around me that go, oi, slow down. Yeah, slow down. Stop being a dickhead. It's a wonderful idea. Yep, love it.
Yeah.
Have you thought of this, 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 and this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I go, yeah, but yeah, I have. Yeah. But I'm looking at the end outcome that seems so exciting, and they're going, yeah. Yeah. Good on you, mate. But I bet you it doesn't turn out that way.
Yeah.
And so that big community, and especially as, take building, for instance, it goes through cycles. Everything does, but building goes through cycles. And those cycles are artificially stimulated by governments and, workforce, and then materials and stuff like that. All these different things have massive effect on it. It will not always be in a growth cycle. It will be in a down cycle, and it can be a long winter, and a short summer, or it can be a long summer and a short winter. And when you've got community and things slow down in the building industry, you can be talking to other people and going, what strategies are you using there? What are those happening there? And this is my biggest point on it, when you have a coach like yours, with discernment being one of your geniuses, Adrian, that idea might work for you, but it's not going to work for Brian over there. There's no chance of that idea working for Brian. Like, his business is like this, with these nuances. Yes, just because it's worked for you, it doesn't mean it will work for him, and that, I think, is the other big value point, that having somebody who's got that overall vision, that's looking across a community and going, yeah, they do that well because this is their discernment level. Yours is here, so you need somebody with that. That's the difference. The other point that I really loved that you made is that when you're listening to, there's lots of points I loved you made, Mick, but one of the other points I've loved you made was that you actively listen, and you make time to actively listen. I'm dyslexic, so I don't like to read, and I shouldn't say I don't like to read. It's a task, and so I listen to quite a few audiobooks. I have that tenacity, so I don't like to not listen to all of it. If it's not getting me, I listen to it on 1.2. If it's getting me, I actively listen to it. I will go, okay, I just need to sit here and listen, and I can only do it in short pieces. If I really love a book, I buy the book, and I actively listen and read at the same time, because my brain can take so much in visually that it can't take in listening.
Yeah.
And dyslexia has a multitude of different it's a big ball of string, and which piece is your piece of that ball of string. But it also, in dyslexia itself, it can affect your listening ability. So you can be very present in a moment, and to couple that with a bit of ADHD, or a lot of ADHD, and you might need to hear it 10 times, and maybe in different formats, different, like, see it as well as. So reading it isn't my strongest point, but it slows down so that I read and listen at the same time. It slows it down enough that I go, oh, okay. And then I've got to do it in small chunks. I can't do it in long chunks. So I don't have that ability. And interesting.
But what I love about what you just said then, which I think is a good philosophical point to take away from the conversation, is that you have, and in some people's minds, I don't want to use the word defect, but a disadvantage. And instead of going, poor me, woe is me, and being a victim about it, you're going, what I need to do to overcome this is do it this way, plus this, and it's a bit of a chore, but that's how I need to do it. The reality of the situation is that doing it the way that you're doing it, because you're overcoming that, seeming disadvantage is giving you a significant advantage in being able to retain and really get the lessons in the text by reading and listening and taking your time, because you're trying to overcome what some people might see as a disadvantage. I see as an advantage.
Yeah.
Created a massive opportunity.
I find that, say, for instance, if I want to listen to something, if I'm just going to, a bit like, a kid with a fidget spinner, I might need to be active to listen to something, but active with something I don't need to use a lot of like the
Brain
discernment
power.
and brain power. So if it's doing exercise or something like that, like walking, whatever, I'll actively learn quicker than I will be if I'm doing something that requires a lot of brain power, but I need some movement. Just to sit, it doesn't seem to work as well. Doesn't seem to work. I don't know why. But that's understanding yourself more and more as you grow older, and I suppose as you get around different things. As a kid, I would sit at the table and I'd always be jiggling my leg. And my mum and my dad would say, "Can you sit still, please?" It would annoy the crap out of them. I actually needed that energy to be burning out so that I could be in that space. I couldn't sit still. And I think that was based off the ADHD part of it. I needed to be moving. I needed to be moving. I needed to be moving. And people go, these kids with fidget spinners, whatever, they need to be moving. It's our system that's maybe broken, that doesn't have them actively enough to give them then the information as they come in, which, I know that you've got a hard stop this morning, so I want to ask a couple of quick questions. Also, though, I really appreciate everything that you've given here, and I think that there's a number of other conversations that would be really good to have. Specifically, really specifically, as people can really learn from this. And when I listen to what you're saying, yes, you coach builders, architects, designers, interior designers, which is a fair few of our listeners, and other business people, from all sorts, farmers to everything. They will have got a meal out of what you've given us so far this morning, and a list of books to go and listen to. So my questions are going to be from the design point of view. The first one's going to be, in your own home, what's your favorite space and what emotion does it bring up?
The one that I'm standing in right now. So this is like the top floor of the house. So it's fundamentally a single story house with an extra room on the top. So I don't know whether you call it a 2-story house or not. I expect it is, but it's just one room sitting on top of the roof of the house, and the previous owners had it as a media room.
Oh, okay, cool.
And my office in the previous house was a small bedroom, and I just thought this was, Christmas on a stick when we got this house. So I got this whole big room, lots of distance. We still use it as a media room with the big telly in it and what have you, but it's just good to have this big space to my own to set my stuff up and set a nice podcast studio up and all that sort of stuff.
Have you got a drum kit in the corner?
No, the drum kit's down in the garage.
Right, okay.
But
how does it make you feel? What emotion does it evoke when you transition into that space?
Interesting question. I'm not even sure how to answer it. I kind of know what the emotion is, but I just feel settled. I feel focused somewhat. I feel like it's the place where I can accomplish stuff.
Sense of accomplishment. Yeah, right. What would your life be like without it?
I'd probably be in a smaller room. No, I just wouldn't feel as settled. Like I don't know. I feel like a sense of certainty and control in this space, because this room is my space and I can do what I want with it. I can put sound deadening on the walls. I can have lighting bars hanging off the roof, all of that sort of stuff, and just set it up so I'm really happy in it and proud of it, and it functions like if you have a look at the workstation I'm talking to you from now, it's like buttons and dials and and sliders and whatever everywhere, and lighting and what have you, but it's all, you know, done with fingertip control. You know, I can turn my lights off and turn my lights on with the press of a button.
Yeah.
All that.
Yeah.
That I love that sort of shit. You know.
The reason I asked the question is because everybody has spaces, some inside the house, some outside of the house. And that thing of giving you certainty and control and having power over that space in the sense of it's yours to do how you please, then gives you the power to be able to do something else, which is coach, produce your podcast, do all these other things. And then you've set up the systems in there to make that a strong outcome as well. It's not by chance that it works. You know it will work. So I find it fascinating to ask the question. And when you transition from anything else into there, you know what's going on in there. You can flick your switches and things happen.
It's kind of like my happy place, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One last question. If you could have any guest, dead or alive, and if they were dead, we'd bring them back to life for it, who would you have on your podcast? Any guest.
That's a really tough question. I don't know what people will think of my answer, but I really, really like and admire The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. I just think he's a hard-working dude, and he just seems to be really, really good at everything he does. He doesn't seem pretentious. I don't know him. I've never met him, but that's just my perception. He just seems like he's a really, really hard worker, and his philosophy is, I will outwork anybody.
Mm-hmm. Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
A trainer like just, I'll out-train you.
Yeah. That's
But The Rock, I think he's a fascinating human being, and you're not talking about him from his acting point of view. You are, but not. You're talking about him from his ethic. His tenacity, and
he seems to not take himself too seriously either. Like, he'll have a laugh. Yeah, particularly when he's with, you know, what's his name? His mate.
Oh, yeah, it'll come to me. But yes, yes, I totally agree. I think one of the things there is because Dwayne listens to my podcast, he's likely to call you.
Oh, good.
Yeah, okay. I'm sure he's a listener.
Have your people call my people.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I think that having these, you know, like a fantasy guests list is the only way to bring them into being. And I think that's really valuable to have something like that where you go, that's who I'd have. I know you got to go, man. Mick, thank you. I so appreciate your time. Let's do it again. And
absolutely, anytime at all.
Pull some gems out. Thanks heaps, buddy. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, mate.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning into our conversation. I hope it left you both informed and inspired. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen. And please don't hesitate to share your design thoughts with me. It's always a joy to hear from you. If you're like me and crave a deeper dive into design thinking, coupled with a love for travel and adventure, consider one of my architectural adventures. Join me and some of my wonderful design friends and embark on a journey of a lifetime. Apply for an unforgettable design experience at adrianramsey.com. With our clients spanning the globe, I firmly believe behind every great project are great people. If you're a great person and seeking to turn your dream into a reality, I'd be honored to design your home with you. Why not join the ranks of our exceptional clients and let's make your heart sing? Reach out to me at studio@ardesignhouse.com. That's studio@ardesignhouse.com, and let's get a conversation going and make your heart sing.